We're learning Hilchos Chanukah, Gimel Ches, Keze Medalgen. How do you skip in Hallow? Maschilim mitchilas Halal ad Chalomish Lamayim Noi Moyim. You say what we look at as one chapter, but it's really half of the chapter. V'doilik. You skip to Voim and you say Hashem Zochronu Yevorech. That's Yevorech Beis Yisrael. Ad Halaluka. You medalek, then you skip again. And Voim and Moshe Hashem until Halaluka. Medalek Voim and Ametzer Korosi Ko. So he's jumping more than we jump. He jumps over Halalu. Hatzefa Halal. Zeu Aminik Aposhet. V'yesh Medalgen Diluk Acher. Rambam says there are those who do it differently. Ketzah Medalgen. How do you skip Rosh Chodesh? You start with Chilas Halal Ad Chalomish Lamayim Moyim. That's Shnei Program Rishonim, because that includes Beis Yisrael. Beis Yisrael. V'doilik, you skip Al Perek Loilonu. V'ayim Hashem Zochroni Yevorech until Halaluka, and you skip on the Perek Ahavti. You say Moshe Hashem Ad Halaluka. Medalek, and you say Ben Ametzik Korosi Ko Hatzefa Halal. That's what the Rambam says, the Minik Poshut, and there are those who skip more. The Emek HaMelech is Medayik, which says Vayim Moshe Hashem Ad Halaluka. Medalek Vayim Ben Ametza, that he skips the whole thing of Haluz Hashem Kol Goyim until Halaluka. The Lashon Rambam, it would seem you skip also on Halil Hashem Kitov Gelam Chazdan Yemano also, etc. The Magen Mishnah says that's a minig beinoni. The Masorikir says that we skip only Leilanu V'Ahavti. And you see in the Mudu, and he cites that with V'Aham and the Tul, and you look in the Siddur, you'll see that that's the way it is. The Mishnah Berurah cites that the Lior Rabba, the name of the Chuvas Binyamin Zev, explains why do you skip on these two, because Leilanu and V'Hashem Zochronu, that you don't say them. Are not the same. You don't read them on Rosh Chodesh. Chayinu Hafting is very similar to Mo'oshiv, and then you skip over it. Now, I added on here the Divrei Orach that it could be that you skip on those things. We said this is shiur, this is praise to Hashem. So only those parts of the Halal which are praise to Hashem, you say when you're saying the Chatzi Halal, as we call it. Whereas when we talk about the rest of it, that's L'Kvod Shamayim, that's a different story. Now we'll turn the page. We'll go to Halacha Tes. Rambam says in Halacha Tes, Kol Hayom Kosher L'Kriyas HaHalal. You can read Halal all day. L'Kriyas HaHalal Mafreya Lo Yotza. So let's see what it says here. In the Peirush, Kol Hayom Kosher L'Kriyas HaHalal. The Magen Mishnah cites the Mishnah, and the Gemara learns it from a posuk Mimizach Shemesh Ad Mevoyoi, which means from sunrise to sunset, or from the posuk Ze Hayom Mosdos Hashem. So it's the day, and even though usually you do it as early as you can, but the Eved you can read it all day. L'Kriyas HaHalal Mafreya Lo Yotza. Magen Mishnah cites Megillah. Somebody reads the Megillah, the Mafreya Lo Yotza. In the Brisa, it says V'chein Halal. Now the Megillah is understood, and we learned it in Hilchos Megillah. You can't read it by skipping psukim and going back to them. The Rebbe learned it from what it says Mimizah Shemesh Ad Mevoyoi. Rashi explains that first the sun rises and then it sets, and you shouldn't change it. It never changes. So too, Mu'ul Hashem Hashem, you shouldn't go backwards. You should say it, do it in the orderly direction. Rabbi Yosef says, Ze Hayom Mosdos Hashem, like the day begins in the morning and ends at night. Meaning according to the order and the way it is explained. In Brochus 15a, it says, somebody reads Shema backwards, Lo Yotza. Rabbeinu Ovadia Bartanura explains, if you start the third posuk before the second, and the second before the first, etc., or one word after the previous word, one word before the previous word, but if he reads the third parsha before the second one, or the second one before the first one, is Yoitza, because the parshas themselves are found in the Torah in three different parshas, Shema is found in the Schanan, Voyim Shemoyen Ekev, and Vayema and Shlach. Shulchan Aruch paskins that you read Halal Mafrei and not Yoitzer. The Mishnah Berurah says if you did it earlier, Yoitzer, even though you're not allowed to, like Rishma. But the Pri Chodesh is Machmer, then you're not Yoitzer. And so it would seem from the Oilas HaTomid. The Meister Rekeach says that the logic tells us like the Pri Chodesh, because Pirkei Halal are close to each other in Tillim. The Mishnah Berurah says one should be machmir to go ahead and read it, but if you should, it is a question whether to read it again. But there's a question if you should make a brocha again. The Rambam continues. Kara v'shoha. He's read and he waited. And he kept on reading. Even if the time that the breaks in between when he didn't say it were long enough to complete the whole hallow, then he's yoitzer. The Magen Mishnah cites Rosh Hashanah that hallow and Megillah are equivalent with regard to this. And that if you wait, then you can go ahead and continue. Hallow and Megillah have the same rule. Find Rosh Hashanah. Yom Shigayim is a hallow. Yesh loi. If a person, when they finish a hallow, it's permitted lahavzik ben perik leperik. You can stop between perik to perik, but be'emtza perik leyafzik. Emtza perik you should not stop. Yom Shigayim behem bedilug. In those days when you skip, I feel be'emtza perik poisik. Even in the middle, you should stop. The Magen Mishnah cites brochas. The Rambam would seem that you can stop for everything, and it would seem to be logically so, because there's no brocha before it or afterwards. So he says there's no brocha afterwards, so therefore it's a minhag, and you're not disturbing anything if you make a hafsokah. But b'emtza perik you don't stop, and even to ask only to say Shalom Aleichem to somebody who you're afraid of, as we know in Hilchos Brochas, somebody who's chayiv, you're obligated to give him covered, like his father or his Rebbe. If you gave him Shalom, if they gave him Shalom, he stops, he has to answer Shalom. In Halacha Yudi says, after Hallel, there's no chiyuv to make a brocha. The Magen Mishnah cites that most of the Meforshim of the opinion that a day that the Yochid finishes Hallel, it's like Kriya Shema, that you can answer between the prokim, only for that what you can answer between in Kriya Shema between the three sections. Now, in those days that you don't finish Hallel, so even the middle of a perik is just like the end of a perik, because you're just reciting something which is not made up of a total item. Lecha Mishnah questions: how do we know that if there's no brocha, afterwards you can stop, and not only for the idea of answering Bnei HaKoved? In Brochas we learned that you can stop and hallow between perik to perik and a kal v'chomer and Kriya Shema. If Kriya Shema, which is deraisa, you can stop to answer. Hal d'Rabbanan certainly so. So you can only say that that's enough to say you can stop for that which you are obligated to do by Kriya Shema. But why should you say Hallel is you're more lenient? And he cites, you learn from the sugya that continues there in Brocha 14a, that poisik ve'en bekach klum. It says you can stop by Hallel and there's nothing wrong with it. Why didn't he say just poisik? To teach you that it's not the same like Kriya Shema, it's of a lesser magnitude, and therefore you can stop in the middle when you're not saying the whole Hallel. Lecha Mishnah cites the Gemara, which questions from Ravina that Rav Bar Shvo, and he didn't stop in the middle of reading it to say Shalom Aleichem. And the answer that Rav Bar Shvo was not considered by Ravina somebody that he was obligated to honor. The Lecha Mishnah questions from here's a proof that you stop in halal only because of COVID. Because it says he didn't feel he had to do it because of COVID, but otherwise you wouldn't. So how can you say you can stop for anything? And he explains that he didn't stop because he didn't consider him worthy at all, and it's called as if somebody's doing something which is forbidden. What the Maggid Mishnah says, he means only that there's at least some sort of a semblance of a necessity. If you'll ask what Abba Bashro was such a Klapi Ravina knew that if he didn't say anything, Abba Bashro would not have any feelings, bad feelings, because he knows that Ravina noticed him. Because if Ravina had not noticed him, then obviously why he didn't say anything to him. So you have to say he noticed him. Sometimes being noticed is enough. Agoras Maimonides cites some Tosfos, Via Chosid, Sha'afilu b'yom she'ena yochid goyim as ahala lo yafsik. You shouldn't stop even that there. Shulchan Aruch paskins, even in the middle you can ask with Sholem Odom that he has to be noig by COVID, and he answers Sholem l'chol Odom. But otherwise you don't stop. Mishnah Berurah explains, even between the program you shouldn't stop. Thus we see that the Mechaber paskins that the din of hefsek and halal is kedin hefsek in Kriyas Shema. Now, Hilchos Pesach 488, the Mechaber says, you do not stop in halal of the first day of Pesach, only like Kriyas Shema, because he's saying the whole halal, which is Be'emtza Perek. You can ask Sholem of your father or your Rebbe. You answer to a person who's nechbat, who said to him Sholem. Between the program, you can only ask for nechbad, and you can answer to everyone. The more adds, only in the first days, which starts the 2 days of Yom Tov, the first days, when you finish halal. But the days that you don't finish halal, he cites the Mechaber that even Be'emtza Perek you can stop. Mishnah Berurah cites from Eliyahu Rabba, B'Shem Avud Raham, and halal apogim are halaluko, and halal Hashem. B'tzei Yisrael leilonu Hashem leilonu ahavti halal Hashem kol goyim until Min HaMeitzah. And he brings from the Radak in the Avud Raham that Min HaMeitzah is not the beginning of the Mizmor, but Hoydel Hashem Gitoy is the Mizmor, because Kilyon Chazoy, the Bein Min HaMeitzah, is not considered Bein HaProkim.